phone rang in the late morning of a clear, cold autumn day. I was just about to go swim at the Y. "Hello?" I said. "Jimmy, this is your daddy's friend Sam down in San Antonio. You remember me, don't you, son?" I felt 33 going on 13. "Yes, Sam, I do. What's up?" "Well, son, are you sitting down? Because I got some real bad news to tell you." Pounding heart, ringing in my ears. "Jimmy, somebody come by your daddy's apartment this morning and shot him down. We're not sure what that was about, but I knowed he had a briefcase with about 30 grand in it, and it ain't there this morning." Sagging, breathing hard. In my head, I see my 70-year-old father open the door to his killers. "Is that it, Sam?" "Well, Jimmy, you all right, son?" "Well, yeah, I guess so," I lied. "Jimmy, we're going to find who done this. Your daddy was a good man, and he knew a lot of folks that won't let him get away with this. Neither. And we're going to get that money back for you, too, son. You hear me?" "Numb," I said. "Yeah, Sam, I hear you." "Son, you got to call a funeral home. Tell them what to do, okay?" "Okay, Sam." "All right, I'll talk at you again soon." Click. Then I cried like a lost child in a crowded department store. After a while, peace came and I went to the Y. I felt odd doing the long swim, like there was something else I should have been doing, but this was all I could think to do. It was December the 4th, 1984. I was 33, a young father with a 4-year-old son living in my first house in Old Craftsman in Oak Cliff, Texas. My wife was a labor and delivery nurse at Baylor Hospital. For the last 5 years, I had worked at low-paid mental health counselor jobs, my last at a halfway house for parolees. I was tired of the go-nowhere, low-salaried jobs and was working to develop a private practice, but it was slow going. We had been married 10 years, and those years were marked by separations for school and for marital problems, broken vows, many fights, many reconciliations. We loved each other, but we had no clue about how to be married. Her father was an absentee alcoholic salesman home only on weekends, and mine was a criminal who'd done long stretches in prison and was gone much of the time when he was out. Neither of us had ever seen a workable marriage in action. We loved one another, but we had no idea how to solve problems or address unmet expectations. Since I was 20, I wanted to be a psychologist. I wasn't sure what that meant, except that I knew you got to wear Merlin's cap of wisdom and make your living casting spells somehow. Not completely aware of it, I was a deeply wounded person, still trying to grasp the fact of a father's abandonment and mother's well-meaning half-truths told to explain it. At 33, I was searching for that sword in the stone that would bring security and satisfaction. It was rough. My expectations of what the career would give much higher than what reality was. I'd been fired twice. I was numb to my own feelings. Strong emotion of any kind mystified me, and I thought those who showed it were strange. Odd for a person with my calling, no? I've since learned that many with this calling are strangers to their own emotions, while looking at those of others as if they're a mold in a petri dish. And yet the engines of emotion were turning, influencing my choice of career, my spouse, my loyalty to my father. I was conceived prior to my parents' wedding, the oldest of 3. My father, a boxing promoter with connections in the underworld, was visiting a friend at the hospital in Chicago where my mother worked, and he ran into her in the hallway as she was going off duty. He complimented her on the slacks she was wearing, asked for her number, and so it began. He was already a committed, hardcore criminal that kept up a facade of being ordinary. He was a heavy in an old Chicago arrangement between the Italian mob and their hired Irish enforcers. And when I say heavy, I mean heavy. His FBI file said that James Dolan was 6'3", 225 pounds in his prime. He was a heavyweight boxer in the Army, and after the war made the pro boxing circuit as the fighting Irish Jimmy Dolan. He had piercing blue-green eyes, a light complexion, and reddish blonde hair, and a dark, double-breasted suit with wide-brimmed hat. He was huge and menacing. I wouldn't have wanted him to come and collect money I didn't have. He once told me how he hung a guy out the window of the Adolphus Hotel by the ankles when he wouldn't pay. At age 70, Doc died at the hands of people he knew, like so many who were murdered. At the time of his death, the San Antonio paper printed a long story detailing his decades of association with the Gambinos, Marcellos, and Traficantes of the world. As an enforcer and collections man, I assume he took lives as well. What is odd about all this is that my father never really seemed like a bad man. He took me fishing, which I hated. He taught me how to pitch a curveball, and one memorable March day, we went to fly a kite at Keys Park in Oak Cliff. The kite got so high we ran out of string, but he flew it like an expert. And I remember wondering, how does he know how to do such marvelous things? And I still recall the image of that kite flying so high in the blue sky as an image of who he was, so mysteriously distant and yet so familiar. The group at the gravesite was small. They were middle-aged men in cheap suits and the women who went with men in cheap suits. They looked like men who worked oil rigs, used car lots, raised a few cattle, or ran dope. Tattoos on some, oily hair, long sideburns, everybody stiff and distracted, and not particularly sad, just kind of grim and resigned. An atmosphere, well, we all knew this sort of thing would happen sooner or later. A scruffy stranger stepped up to the grave and said, "I always told the son of a bitch I'd sing this if you went first. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a poor wretch like me." My insides lurched and I cried and I choked. Afterwards, my cousins and I all did what Irish Catholics do at funerals. We went to a bar and we got drunk. As I've said, until the moment of my father's murder, I had been an emotionally numb youth, my nose pressed against a thick pane of glass on the other side of which were such things as sorrow, loss, vulnerability, compassion. With his death and my passage through the tunnel of grief, the glass disappeared and I joined the ranks of suffering humanity. It's 28 years since the shooting. Looking back, I see concentric rings of recovery from the shock and the loss. The first 5 years were the most difficult. Profound depressions came out of nowhere, strongest on December the 4th. I had bouts of paranoia that they were coming after me next. While cycling 1 year after the murder, I became convinced that I was being followed by someone in a black Lincoln, and I took extreme measures to elude them. When I got home, I watched out the window for at least a half an hour to make sure it was safe. Monsters spring from murder, but they are not the killers. They are shame, rage, and fear. But with them came the angel of suffering and a better understanding of self. My wife and I pulled together. I became an attentive father to my son and later my daughter. Doc was not a gentle old senior citizen biding his time in peace. He was a criminal to the end. His primary victims, others like him, and the cause of death, the life he lived. I'm still married to the brave woman who saw me through those terrible times. My son is well grown, and my daughter, born a year after the murder, as well. The man who flew the kite so high is long gone, but the kite remains, a bobbing bright fleck in the blue Texas sky, and now it is I who holds a taut string tugging in the wind.